The examination hall stretched across 3 vertical levels of the Arcturus Institute, its transparent aluminum walls revealing the swirling methane storms of Titan far below. I pressed my sensory appendages against the cool surface of my desk, feeling the familiar hum of the quantum processor embedded beneath. My name is Velos, just Velos. No fancy designations or numerical suffixes like some of my peers preferred. I had been studying at this prestigious academy for 2 cycles now, and I thought I had seen everything. I was wrong. The being that walked through the entrance airlock that morning made every student in the hall stop mid-calculation. She was small, absurdly small. Her frame barely reached the chest plate of our Talaxian professor, and she moved with this bizarre bipedal gait that looked like she might topple over at any moment. Her skin was this odd peach color, not scaled, not chitinous, not even properly chromatophoric, just smooth and weirdly vulnerable looking. "Attention class," Professor Kilnex announced, his 3 vocal chambers producing that characteristic harmonic hum. "This is Mira. She is from a planet called Earth, and she will be joining us for the Advanced Quantum Mechanics Assessment." A human, an actual human. I had heard stories, of course. Everyone had. The species that still used chemical rockets well into their space age. The civilization that somehow survived, despite having only 1 heart, 1 brain, and the most ridiculously fragile biology imaginable. They were the punchline of every cosmic joke at the academy. My friend Threx, a gelatinous Morphean who occupied the space to my left, rippled with what I recognized as amusement. "This should be entertaining," he bubbled through his translation membrane. "I heard humans still do basic arithmetic with their organic neural tissue. No quantum assistance whatsoever." "That cannot be true," I replied, adjusting my optical sensors to get a better look at the human girl. She was settling into her seat, which had been hastily modified with some kind of cushioned surface. No species could function at academic level without computational enhancement. "Want to make a wager? What are the terms? If the human scores in the bottom 10 percentile, you owe me a full tank of nitrogen ice cream. If she somehow, miraculously, scores higher, I will consume an entire meal of solid food." Threx shuddered at the thought. His species found the concept of solid matter digestion absolutely revolting. "Deal." I extended my appendage and we sealed the bet with a proper chemical exchange. The examination protocols were loading onto our neural interfaces. The familiar tingle of data streaming directly into my cerebral cortex made me relax. This was comfortable. This was normal. 6 hours to solve 50 problems, ranging from particle entanglement to probability field manipulation. The questions were generated by the Institute's master AI, a processing entity so advanced, it required its own pocket dimension to house its computing matrices. I glanced at the human girl. She was staring at a flat screen, an actual visual display screen, like something from a museum. "Is her equipment malfunctioning?" I whispered to Threx. "No, you idiot. That is how they interface with technology. Through their optical organs. They look at symbols and process them with their meat brains. That is the most inefficient thing I have ever heard." "Shh. Professor Kilnex is activating the quantum seal. No more talking." The examination began. I felt the first problem materialize in my consciousness. A 12-dimensional wave function collapse scenario with variable temporal constants. Tricky, but manageable. I allocated processing power from my auxiliary neural cluster and began running solution matrices. Around me, I could sense my classmates doing the same. The air hummed with quantum fluctuations as hundreds of enhanced minds bent probability itself to solve problems that would have seemed like magic to species from previous eras. Except for Mira. She was moving her fingers across her primitive input device, her eyes darting back and forth across her screen. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. It looked exhausting. 2 hours passed. I was making excellent progress. 20 problems down, 30 to go, and my confidence was building. I had even solved the notorious problem 17, the one about reverse entropy and closed time like loops. That would surely put me in the top 15%. I risked another glance at the human. She was still tapping away, but something about her posture had changed. She was leaning forward now, and her face had arranged itself into an expression I could not quite interpret. Her mouth was slightly curved upward. Was that pain? Digestive distress? Threx? I subvocalized through our private quantum channel. Is the human experiencing a medical emergency? Her facial structure is deforming. That is called smiling, you. Provincial rock dweller. It indicates pleasure or satisfaction. Satisfaction? From an exam? Is her species masochistic? How should I know? Just focus on your own problems. But I could not stop watching her. There was something mesmerizing about the absolute focus she displayed. Every few minutes, she would reach up and push a strand of her head fiber, what humans called hair, behind her auditory receptor organ. The gesture seemed unconscious, automatic. It made her seem even more alien somehow. 3 hours in, disaster struck. My auxiliary neural cluster began overheating. Not critically, but enough that I had to divert processing power to cooling functions. This was going to slow me down. I checked my progress. 28 problems complete. I was falling behind my projected pace. The human girl stood up, just stood up, in the middle of the exam, and walked to Professor Kilnex's desk. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. This was unprecedented. Had she given up already? Professor, she said, her voice carrying in the silent hall, I think there is an error in problem 42. The entire room seemed to freeze. Threx stopped mid-ripple. I felt my chromatic plates shift to alarmed yellow. An error? In a problem generated by the master AI? Impossible. The master AI did not make errors. It was as close to infallible as processing architecture could achieve. Professor Kilnex's facial tendrils twitched. Miss Kozlov, I assure you the examination has been thoroughly verified. Perhaps you have misunderstood the question parameters? No, sir. I understand the parameters, but the boundary conditions given in Part C contradict the initial state vector defined in Part A. If you apply the standard Hartman transformation with these values, you get a divide by zero error. The problem has no solution as written. The professor's tendrils stopped moving entirely. In our species, that indicated extreme cognitive load. He was accessing the problem himself, running it through his own enhanced consciousness. Seconds ticked by. Then minutes. How did you... He began, then stopped. Started again. Miss Kozlov, you are correct. There is indeed a transcription error in the quantum foam density parameter. I will need to consult with the master AI about how this occurred. He made an announcement to the class. Problem 42 would be removed from scoring. Anyone who had attempted it would receive proportional credit. Mira walked back to her seat, that small smile still on her face. Every student watched her pass. I heard whispered conversations through various communication channels, sensory bands lighting up with shocked conjecture. Did a human just find an error that the master AI missed? Impossible. The AI is infallible. Clearly not. Maybe the human has hidden enhancements? She is unmodified baseline. I scanned her myself. Pure biological processing. The examination continued, but the atmosphere had changed. We were all aware of her now. The small human, with her primitive screen and her organic brain, working through problems at her own steady pace. I tried to focus, but my concentration was shattered. 4 hours in, I had completed 39 problems. Decent, but not exceptional. I was going to score somewhere in the middle of the class. Respectable, acceptable, mediocre. I hated it. 5 hours. 43 problems. My neural cluster was screaming warnings about heat stress. I had to slow down further. The human girl was still working, still tapping, still smiling that weird smile. 6 hours. Examination complete. Our screens locked and began uploading results to the grading partition. I slumped in my seat, exhausted. Neural enhancement was powerful, but it had costs. I would need a full cycle of rest to recover from this level of cognitive strain. Well? Threx bubbled weakly. That was brutal. 43, and you owe me nothing. Look, the human girl was stretching. Actual physical stretching, extending her limbs and rotating her spinal column in ways that looked extremely uncomfortable. Then, she picked up a small container and began consuming some kind of solid matter. She was eating, during the post-exam period. Like this had been a casual afternoon activity instead of the most grueling assessment of our academic careers. I do not understand, I said. Neither do I, friend. Neither do I. Results would be posted in 3 days. The grading algorithm was complex, weighing not just correct answers, but methodology, efficiency, and elegance of solution. It usually took the evaluation sub-AI about 72 hours to process all the data. Those 3 days felt like an eternity. I tried to forget about it, focusing on my other courses and my research project on gravitational lensing effects. But my mind kept returning to that examination hall, to the small human girl who had found an error that a superintelligent AI had missed. Finally, the notification arrived. Results were posted. I accessed the board with every other student in our cohort, our various forms of consciousness, all converging on the data simultaneously. The rankings appeared. Names and scores, scrolling across my vision in order from highest to lowest. First place, Mira, human. Score 97.3%. I had to check twice, 3 times. My optical sensors must be malfunctioning. But no, there it was. The human girl had not just passed. She had not just done well. She had achieved the highest score in the entire class. Higher than Xerphus, the Cerebrux prodigy, with the artificially expanded cranium. Higher than Quilmara, who had 4 separate neural clusters running in parallel. Higher than every enhanced, optimized, augmented student in the academy. My score was 78.9%. Respectable. Top 35 in the class. But compared to her numbers, it felt like I had barely passed. The common area exploded with confusion. Students clustered in groups, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of disbelief. It has to be an error. Someone checked the grading algorithm. Maybe she cheated? How? She was not even connected to the network. Then how? I found Threx near the nutritional dispensary. His gelatinous form was a sickly gray color. You look unwell, I observed. I think I am going to regret this bet, he moaned. Solid food. Actual solid food. My digestive vacuoles are going to rebel. Forget the bet. How did she do it? Do what? Score higher than everyone? Velos? I have no idea. None of us do. It defies every principle of cognitive enhancement theory we have studied. Then we ask her. What? We ask the human, directly. I want to know how her unenhanced organic brain outperformed systems that cost more than a small planetary economy. Threx rippled uncertainly. That seems forward. I do not care. Are you coming? We found Mira in the observation lounge, staring out at Titan's orange atmosphere. She was alone, which surprised me. With a score like that, I expected her to be surrounded by admirers or jealous rivals. Excuse me, I said, my translator converting my thoughts into something approximating human vocal patterns. Miss Kozlov? She turned. Up close, she was even smaller than I remembered. The top of her head barely reached my mid-thorax. You can call me Mira. Miss Kozlov makes me sound like my grandmother. I am Velos. This is Threx. We wanted to congratulate you on your examination performance. Oh, thanks. She made a gesture with her shoulders that I think was supposed to indicate humility. I got lucky with a few of the later problems. Lucky, Threx repeated. You scored higher than students with processing power equivalent to medium-sized computing clusters. That was not luck. She laughed. Actual vocalized laughter. The sound was strange, but not unpleasant. Okay, maybe not entirely luck. Can I be honest with you? Guys? Please, I said. Your AI is really smart. Ridiculously smart. But it thinks in a very specific way. Linear, logical, process-driven. When I was looking at those problems, I noticed patterns in how they were constructed. Like there was a template. Of course there was a template, I said. The master AI uses established pedagogical frameworks. Exactly. So, once I figured out the template, I could predict how problems would escalate in complexity. And here is the thing about being human. She tapped her head with one finger. We are really good at pattern recognition. We evolved to spot predators in tall grass and find food sources in complex environments. Our brains are practically hardwired for it. But pattern recognition does not solve quantum mechanics problems, Threx protested. No, but it helps you eliminate wrong answers really fast. It helps you see shortcuts. It helps you recognize when something feels wrong, even if you cannot immediately articulate why. She smiled again. Like problem 42. I knew something was off before I even started solving it. The numbers just felt wrong. Felt wrong. I repeated slowly. You are saying you solved problems based on feelings? Partly, yeah. Humans call it intuition. It is not mystical or anything. It is just our subconscious processing, picking up on details our conscious mind has not noticed yet. This was fascinating and terrifying. So you are saying your lack of enhancement is actually an advantage? In some ways, maybe. Your neural implants are amazing, do not get me wrong, but they also create dependencies. They make you think in specific ways. I had to develop different strategies because I do not have those tools. And sometimes, different is exactly what you need. Threx and I exchanged what probably looked like confused glances to her. This is not what they teach us in cognitive enhancement class, I said. I bet it isn't. She turned back to the window. You know what the the thing about being here is? Not the coursework, not the technology gap. It is that everyone assumes I am handicapped because I am baseline biological. They look at me and see limitations. But back home on Earth, some of our greatest breakthroughs came from people working with nothing but their minds and maybe a pencil and paper. What is pencil and paper? Primitive writing instruments and surface. The point is, sometimes constraints force creativity. When you cannot just throw processing power at a problem, you have to actually understand it. Really understand it. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the storms churn across Titan's surface. I owe you an apology, I said finally. I made assumptions about your capabilities based on your species. That was wrong. It is okay. Everyone does it. But hey, at least now you know. She grinned. Earth might be backwards in some ways, but we are still here. Still competing. Still surprising everyone. That you are, Threx bubbled. That you absolutely are. As we left the observation lounge, I could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my understanding of intelligence, of capability, of what it meant to be advanced. The human girl had not won despite her biological limitations. Maybe, in some way I was only beginning to comprehend, she had won because of them. The implications were staggering. And this was only the midterm exam. The weeks following Mira's historic examination performance changed everything at Arcturus Institute. Not immediately, and not in ways I expected. The transformation crept through the academy like frost forming on glass, beautiful and dangerous, and impossible to ignore. Professor Kilnex called an emergency faculty meeting. I knew because my roommate Hexel worked in the administrative office and had excellent hearing across multiple sonic frequencies. Apparently, 3 other professors had discovered similar errors in problems generated by the master AI over the past academic cycle. Small errors, negligible errors, the kind that would not affect scoring significantly. Except they were errors, and the master AI was not supposed to make errors. Ever. They are investigating, Hexil told me one evening while we consumed our respective nutritional requirements. He preferred liquid mercury supplements. I stuck with synthesized protein clusters. Apparently, the master AI has been operating under increased load. Budget cuts meant they reduced its dimensional housing by 14% last cycle. So, it is making mistakes because administrators wanted to save money? I felt my chromatic plates shift to angry orange. That is absurd. That is bureaucracy, my friend. Meanwhile, Mira had become something of a celebrity. Students who had mocked her 3 weeks ago now wanted to study with her. She handled the attention with remarkable grace, though I noticed she often ate lunch alone in the observation lounge, staring out at Titan's storms. I found her there on a gray afternoon, local time. Mind if I join you? She gestured to the space beside her. Free universe. Well, mostly free. Some areas require permits. I settled onto the bench, adjusting my lower appendages for comfort. You eat alone frequently. Observant. She took a bite of something brown and textured that looked mildly horrifying. It is not that I do not like the other students. It is just exhausting being the weird novelty all the time. Everyone wants to know how the dumb human beat the smart AI. I do not think anyone considers you dumb anymore. No, now they think I am some kind of savant, like I have secret powers. She laughed, but it sounded tired. Truth is, I just work really hard, harder than most people realize, because I have to. What do you mean? She set down her food container. Look, you have neural implants that let you download information directly into your brain. Threx can divide his consciousness to work on multiple problems simultaneously. That Talaxian girl in our astral mechanics class, what is her name? Yennefer. She can process visual information at rates that would give me seizures. So I have to study 3 times as long to keep up. While you are sleeping or socializing, I am reviewing notes. When you can solve a problem in your head, I have to write out every step, because that is how human memory works. We encode better when we physically engage with material. She picked up her food again. Being baseline in an enhanced world means working twice as hard for half the recognition. Usually, I had never considered it from that angle. That sounds lonely. Sometimes, yeah. But you know what? It also makes me appreciate every success more. When I solved problem 42, when I figured out that error, that was all me. Not software. Just my weird little human brain making connections. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. That felt good. Before I could respond, Threx oozed into the lounge, moving faster than I had ever seen him travel. There you are. Both of you. You need to see this. Now. What happened? Mira asked. Professor Kilnex just announced a new competition. The Institute Challenge. Teams of 3. Mixed species, solving real-world problems. First prize is a research grant and internship positions at the Galactic Science Consortium. My chromatic plates flashed, excited yellow. The Galactic Science Consortium was the most prestigious research organization in known space. An internship there could launch a career into the stratosphere, metaphorically speaking. Wait, teams of 3? Mira stood up. Mixed species? That is what I said. Yes. Threx rippled with anticipation. I already registered us. Velos, you and me. Team designation. Adaptive Solutions. You did what? I said. Registered us. Try to keep up. The competition starts in 2 days. We need to prepare. I mean, I appreciate it, but would not you rather have someone with enhancements? No, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. Threx is right. We need different perspectives, different approaches. That is the entire point of mixed species teams. Plus, Threx added, you found an error the master AI missed. That is exactly the kind of thinking we need. She considered this, then nodded. Okay, I am in. But I have conditions. 1. We meet at times that work for my biology. I need 7 hours of sleep per night cycle. 2. We actually listen to each other. No dismissing ideas, because they come from a baseline human. 3. If I say we need to slow down and think, we slow down and think. Deal? Deal. Threx and I said simultaneously. The Institute challenge was notorious. Every year, teams competed to solve problems submitted by corporations, governments, and research institutions across the galaxy. Real problems with real stakes. Previous challenges had included designing sustainable fusion reactors for ice worlds, developing faster-than-light communication protocols, and creating artificial gravity systems for generation ships. This year's problem was announced at the opening ceremony. Professor Kilnex stood on the central platform while 200 students from 40 different species watched, with various sensory organs. Your challenge is this, he began. The mining colony on Kepler 447b is experiencing catastrophic equipment failure. Their quantum drill systems, which they use to extract rare isotopes from the planetary core, keep shutting down. 3 separate technical teams have investigated. All used top-tier diagnostic AI. None have identified the root cause. Your task is to analyze the data, identify the problem, and propose a solution. You have 72 hours. The data packets downloaded to our personal systems, terabytes of sensor readings, maintenance logs, engineering specifications, and failure reports. I felt my neural cluster groan under the sudden influx. That is a lot of information, Mira said, staring at her primitive screen. 6.3 terabytes, to be precise, Threx calculated. We should divide it into sections. Velos, you take the mechanical systems data. I will handle the quantum field readings. Mira can review the maintenance logs and operational procedures. We found a study pod and got to work. Hours blurred together. I processed mechanical stress reports, vibration analyses, material fatigue studies. Everything looked normal. The equipment was functioning within acceptable parameters right up until it suddenly was not. This makes no sense, I muttered after the first 12 hours. The drill systems should be working. There is no mechanical reason for failure. Same with the quantum fields, Threx said. All measurements are nominal. Field coherence, entanglement, stability, resonance frequencies, everything checks out. Guys, Mira said quietly, I think I found something. We turned to her. She had covered her primitive screen with notes written in her bizarre human script. The failures are not random. They follow a pattern. Look at the timestamps. She displayed her findings. Sure enough, every failure occurred at intervals of 7.3 hours, plus or minus 12 minutes. That could be a resonance effect, I suggested. Something in the drilling operation creating feedback loops. That is what the other technical teams thought, Mira said. They spent weeks analyzing resonance patterns. Found nothing. But here is what they did not look at. She pulled up a different data set. Staff schedules. Staff schedules? Threx rippled in confusion. What do organic sleep cycles have to do with quantum drilling equipment? Everything. Maybe. Look, the mining colony runs 3 shifts. Each shift change happens at 7.2-hour intervals, And guess what happens during shift changes? The crews rotate, I said slowly. Right. And during rotation, there is a brief period where both shifts are present. Maximum personnel in the facility, which means maximum biological activity. More breathing, more movement, more electromagnetic activity from biological neural systems. You think biology is interfering with quantum systems? I could not keep the skepticism from my voice. Not interfering. Resonating. These miners are mostly Valkyrian, right? According to the crew manifest, 86%. Valkyrians have crystalline neural structures that emit low-frequency electromagnetic pulses. Individually, those pulses are negligible, but get 40 of them in close proximity during shift change? She pulled up a simulation she had built using basic computational tools. The electromagnetic signatures of Valkyrian neural activity, overlapped and amplified, created a waveform that matched almost exactly with the quantum drill's field stabilization frequency. Constructive interference. Threx breathed. The biological signatures are creating constructive interference with the quantum containment fields, which causes momentary instability, I continued, understanding dawning. Not enough to show up on diagnostic scans, but enough to trigger safety shutdowns. Exactly. Mira leaned back. The AI teams missed it because they were looking for technical failures. They never considered biological factors because, well, why would organic neural activity affect advanced quantum machinery? But sometimes, the simplest answer is the right one. The miners are accidentally turning off their own equipment just by being near it in groups. We sat in stunned silence. It was brilliant. And completely obvious in hindsight. And it never would have occurred to me in a million cycles. How did you even think to check staff schedules? I asked. Because that is what humans do when troubleshooting. We look at the weird stuff, the things that seem unrelated. My dad was an engineer back on Earth. He always said the problem is never where you think it is. So I looked where nobody else was looking. We spent the next day refining our solution, running simulations, preparing our presentation. The answer was actually simple, once you understood the cause. Modify the shift change protocols to stagger crew rotation, or install biological dampening fields around the drill systems, or adjust the quantum containment frequencies to avoid resonance with Valkyrian neural patterns. Any of those solutions would work. The presentation day arrived. 27 teams had made it to the final round. One by one, they presented their findings. Complex solutions, involving equipment replacement, software patches, exotic matter shielding. Some teams had spent their entire time budget building elaborate technical solutions to problems that did not exist. When our turn came, Mira did most of the talking. She explained the biological resonance theory, walked through our data analysis, demonstrated the interference. Patterns. She made it sound obvious, inevitable, simple. The judging panel consisted of 5 professors and 2 industry representatives. They listened in silence. When Mira finished, the room stayed quiet for what felt like an eternity. Then, Professor Kilnex began vibrating his thorax rapidly. In his species, that indicated extreme amusement. Miss Kozlov, are you seriously telling us that 3 professional engineering teams missed the solution because they forgot to account for the crew taking breaks? Not taking breaks, sir. Changing shifts. But yes, essentially. One of the industry representatives, a massive corvandite with 6 arms and an exoskeleton like polished obsidian, leaned forward. We spent 2 million credits on consulting fees trying to solve this problem. You are saying the answer was in the employee schedule? The answer was in the interaction between the employee schedule and the equipment's operational parameters. Yes, sir. The corvandite made a sound like grinding rock plates. I thought we were doomed. Then I realized he was laughing. This is either the most embarrassing moment of my corporate career, or the most brilliant cost savings ever implemented? Possibly both. He turned to his fellow judges. I vote for this team. The simplicity is elegant, the analysis is sound, and it will cost us basically nothing to implement. The other judges conferred briefly. Professor Kilnex announced the results. Team Adaptive Solutions, first place. Congratulations. The celebration in the common area lasted until the early morning hours, local time. Students from dozens of species mixed together, sharing various intoxicants and congratulatory gestures. Threx consumed something that made his gelatinous form glow faintly purple. I indulged in a mild neural stimulant that enhanced my chromatic displays to unprecedented brightness. Mira drank water. Just water. Human biology is weird about alcohol at high altitude, she explained. Also, I like remembering my victories. You did well, I told her. Better than well. You were exceptional. We were exceptional. Team effort, remember? You know what I mean. The biological resonance angle. That was all you. She shrugged, but she was smiling. That is all any of us can do, right? Think about things in the way our particular brains are wired to think? Threx oozed over, his form wobbling slightly. I have decided something. Humans are terrifying. You show up with your fragile biology and your primitive technology and your weird pattern recognition brains, and you just casually outthink everyone. It is deeply unsettling. Should I apologize? Mira asked, grinning. No, you should keep doing it. The galaxy needs more unsettling. He raised his drinking appendage. To adaptive solutions. In all forms. We touched our various drinking implements together. It was a human custom, Mira had explained. Clinking glasses for celebration. It seemed inefficient, but oddly satisfying. Later, after the party wound down, the three of us ended up back in the observation lounge. Titan's storms had cleared slightly, revealing the massive bulk of Saturn hanging in the black sky like a jewel. Do you ever miss it? I asked Mira. Earth? Every single day? The smell of rain, the feeling of real gravity, food that actually tastes like something instead of nutritional paste. She paused. But I would not trade this experience for anything. Being here, proving that humans can compete, can contribute something valuable. That matters. You have certainly proven that, Threx said. Question though, what happens when you go back? Will you tell them about us? About the Institute? Of course. Earth needs to know what is out here. Not just the technology, but the people. The diversity of thought and experience. She looked at us. I want them to know I made friends. Real friends. That, despite being from completely different worlds with completely different biology, we figured out how to work together. How to respect each other's strengths. That sounds like a speech, I observed. Sorry, humans get sentimental sometimes. Side effect of our emotional processing. No, I said. It was good. True. We sat in comfortable silence, three beings who should have had nothing in common, watching the cosmos spin above us. Somewhere, on Kepler 447b, miners would soon implement our solution. The drills would run smoothly, resources would flow, problems would be solved, all because a human girl looked where nobody else thought to look. Hey, Velos, Mira said after a while. That bet you made with Threx, about me scoring in the bottom percentile? I felt my chromatic plates flush, embarrassed blue. You heard about that? The acoustics in the exam hall are really good. Human hearing, remember? We pick up a lot. She was grinning. So did he ever pay up? I consumed an entire kilogram of solid matter. Threx moaned. It was the worst experience of my life. I felt heavy for days. Good. Maybe next time you will not underestimate the dumb human. I never said dumb, Threx protested weakly. You thought it, though. Admit it. Fine. Yes, I thought it. I was wrong. Are you happy now? Extremely. Mira stood and stretched in that peculiar human way. I should get some sleep. We have advanced field theory in the morning, and Professor Chiksil actually makes us use our brains instead of just processing power. Because of you, I said. She changed her teaching methods after your examination performance. Now she emphasizes understanding over computation speed. Really? That is actually kind of cool. Mira headed toward the exit, then paused. Thanks, guys, for believing in me, for choosing me for the team. It means more than you probably realize. After she left, Threx and I remained, watching Saturn's rings catch the distant sunlight. She is changing things, Threx said quietly. Not just at the Institute, everywhere. I heard the Galactic Science Consortium is reviewing their enhancement requirements for researchers. Some are suggesting that baseline biological intelligence might offer perspectives that augmented minds miss. That will be controversial. Everything worth doing is controversial. He rippled, thoughtfully. You know what the scariest part is? She is just one human. One single individual from a species barely into interstellar exploration. What happens when more of them arrive? When Earth really joins the galactic community? I considered this. It was a valid question. Humanity had been on the periphery for so long, dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. But if one human student could shake the foundations of how we thought about intelligence and capability, what could billions of them do? I think, I said slowly, the galaxy is about to get very interesting. That is what I am afraid of. But he was smiling when he said it. Or doing whatever passed for. Smiling when you are a gelatinous blob. The news of our victory spread through human space faster than light communication. Mira became something of a celebrity back on Earth. She started receiving messages from students, teachers, researchers, people who had been told they were not smart enough, not enhanced enough, not good enough, people who saw in her success a validation of their own worth. She handled it with typical human humility, deflecting praise and emphasizing teamwork. But I could see it affected her. The weight of representation, being not just herself, but a symbol for her entire species. 3 months later, the Galactic Science Consortium made their announcement. They were establishing a new research division focused on comparative cognition studies. The goal was to understand how different types of intelligence, both enhanced and baseline, approached problem solving. They wanted to identify strengths and weaknesses, find complementary combinations, develop new methodologies that incorporated diverse thinking styles, and they wanted Mira to help lead it. I do not know if I should accept, she confessed one evening. We were back in our usual spot, observation lounge, watching the universe turn. I am only 23 years old. I barely understand half the technology here. How am I supposed to guide cutting-edge research? The same way you solved the mining colony problem, I said. By looking where others do not. By trusting your instincts. By being exactly who you are. What if I fail? Then you fail. And you learn. And you try again. Is that not what humans do? You told me once that your species evolved not because you were the strongest or the fastest, but because you were stubborn. You kept trying when other species gave up. She laughed. I did say that, did not I? Okay, you are right. I will do it. On one condition. What condition? You and Threx come work with me. I need people who challenge my assumptions, who call me out when I am wrong, who treat me like a colleague instead of a curiosity. Plus, you already know how my weird brain works. That is valuable. You want us to join the Galactic Science Consortium? I felt my chromatic plates cycle through several colors of shock. We have not even finished our degrees. Details. We will finish. But this opportunity will not wait. And honestly, I think we make a good team. Different perspectives, different strengths, genuine friendship. That is rare in academic research. Trust me. Threx materialized beside us. He had a gift for showing up at important moments. I heard my name. Are we making life-changing decisions without proper deliberation again? Apparently, I said. Excellent. I am in. Whatever it is, I am in. And just like that, our futures shifted. 3 students from 3 different worlds, brought together by circumstance and mutual respect, about to embark on research that would change how the galaxy thought about intelligence itself. Looking back, I realized that the real lesson was not about humans being special or superior. It was about the value of diversity, of different minds approaching the same problem from different angles, of combining strengths rather than competing over who was strongest. Mira taught us that being different was not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to cultivate. That limitations could force creativity. That baseline biology was not something to apologize for or transcend, but a valid and valuable way of experiencing and understanding reality. She taught us, essentially, to stop looking down on our own potential while chasing someone else's version of perfection. The human girl scored higher than the AI. But more importantly, she showed us that scoring higher was never really the point. Understanding better was the point. Thinking differently was the point. Working together was the point. And on that foundation, we built something extraordinary. Saturn continued its slow dance above. Titan. The storms swirled. The universe expanded. And 3 friends, impossibly different yet fundamentally alike, prepared to explore mysteries that neither enhancement nor evolution alone could solve. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, but we did, and we could not wait to show them.